Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's E-G-G-B-U-R-T, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
The ad right before we went on the air was Shelley Barr talking about the Hawthorne Inn. First off, Hawthorne Inn, excellent place. Have you ever eaten at the Hawthorne Inn, John?
I haven't been there,
no,
but I love the commercials.
It is such a good place. I mean sincerely, it's great food. The interesting thing is, it is literally in the middle of nowhere. If you've ever been to Labadee, downtown Labadee is literally like 5 buildings. That's pretty much all downtown Labadee is. And 2 of the buildings are the Hawthorne Inn and their new gathering place they have, like an event space and things like that. But it reminds me of Shelley, and Shelley and I did the show on our other station, Westplex 107, for 4 years. And unfortunately, Shelley, and she's not afraid of me talking about this, has some health issues and no longer able to do the show with me. John, the interesting thing about it is I do appreciate the fact you're doing the show with me, but I miss Shelley because I can have so much fun setting her up on things.
That's right. You guys had such good chemistry together.
You are to the point where a lot of times you know where I'm going, but Shelley was sometimes to the point where I'd say something and I would say something goofy and she would just walk right into it. My favorite thing was when I would make up stuff, and I guess I was convincing enough to the point where sometimes, 2 or 3 days later, she'd say, the other day you said so-and-so, and I agree with you. I found out that's nothing but BS. And I go, that's the name of the show, Shelley.
She was, what's the word? She was definitely a good sport.
Well,
and boy, did she have a high tolerance for you. Boy. People can say that Brad's an acquired taste, but to say that, you got to build up a tolerance for Brad, right?
Right, yeah. Okay. I've come out and said, and I've had Mark McCluskey on the air twice, both times, and I think he knows that I think what he's doing is quite honestly wrong. I've came out and said that to him. I've tried to get Bill Eigel on because he's another one of the purists. If you know what we're talking about, this whole thing, this vetting thing, where essentially, I don't know if it started in Franklin County, but Franklin County already has this in place. Correct, John?
Yeah, they were certainly a leader. Vernon County and Franklin County Republican Central Committee was certainly a leader in this, yeah.
And essentially the way it is, if you live in Franklin County right now and you don't like the way things are going, you decide you want to go for what they call, aldermen or council people or whatever. And it's sort of weird because they have 3 of them out in Franklin County. There's 2.
Like a county commissioner.
Yeah, county commissioner. There's 2 zones, Zone 1 and Zone 2, and then there's the presiding commissioner, which is Mr. Brinker, who, believe it or not, used to be on this radio station, which is a whole other story. And what they've done is they've set it up with the Republican Central Committee in Franklin County that you just can't put your name on the ballot. You have to get their approval. And they have to essentially say, well, we don't know if you're as good a Republican as we think you are. So last week, it came out that Mark McCluskey, who essentially was on the side of the vetting process, had a court case in Vernon County, which is a relatively small county. I think it's only 19 or 20,000 people. And essentially he won. Their side won, essentially meaning that they can kick people off the ballot. And the interesting story was that because of that ruling, they kicked 8 people off the ballot. I think there's 2 or 3 offices that now there's nobody running for. There's nobody on the ballot because they kicked the people off.
Yeah, and I think and lawyers would say, Brad, to be fair, they weren't kicking them off the ballot. They're just saying they can't be on the ballot. They're blocking them from being on the ballot. That's probably a more accurate way to say it.
Well, these people were on the ballot because of the fact that
they were incumbents, but the ballots hadn't been printed, Brad.
Okay. Story sent to me yesterday. It was originally published May 10th, which was Friday, updated the 13th of May, which is Monday. Okay? This is from the Associated Press. And the title of the article is, "The Nebraska GOP is rejecting all Republican congressional incumbents in Tuesday's primary election." So I guess they had a primary election. So the GOP is saying, no, we don't want any of the incumbents. So, and here's the first paragraph of the story. In one of the most closely watched congressional races this year, U.S. Rep. Don Bacon of Nebraska is looking to defeat a fellow Republican in Tuesday's primary election in his quest for re-election. He'll have to do it without the support of the state Republican Party, which has endorsed his primary challenger. Bacon, whose district includes the state's largest city of Omaha, isn't the only one being snubbed. The Nebraska GOP, which has taken over by those loyal to former President Donald Trump during a contentious state convention in 2022, has refused to endorse any of the Republican incumbents who hold all 5 of the state's congressional seats. The state party has endorsed primary challengers to U.S. Senate Pete Ricketts and Representative Adrian Smith, who represents the state's vast rural 3rd congressional district, and has declined to issue endorsements in the primary races of U.S. Senator Deb Fischer and Representative Mike Flood, who represent the 1st congressional district that includes the state capital of Lincoln. Both Fischer and Flood face primary challengers who entered those races after the Nebraska GOP announced its endorsement decision in January. So here's a situation where the GOP Central Committee of the state is kicked essentially anybody running in the Republican running for U.S. Rep. State, House of Representatives, they've kicked them off. They said, no, we're not going to endorse them. Now they don't have.
Well, they appear on the ballot, though, right, Brad?
They appear on the ballot, but they're saying, if you go and read the article, they're talking about that this thing came about in 2022, so it's almost coming up on 2 years old. They're talking about the fact that they want to essentially enact what they're doing in Vernon County and Franklin County, where the Central Committee can say, we don't think you're good enough Republican. I think this is so wrong. I really do.
So here's what I would be afraid of if I was the Nebraska. You said Nebraska Republican Party, right?
Right.
The state Republican
GOP,
Party.
yes.
What if those incumbents, but everyone knows that incumbents have a lot of power. They have the power of the office. If those incumbents get elected, does or does not the state Republican Party look completely impotent?
Well, let me read you a couple more, and let me read you a couple more interesting paragraphs out of this article. It says it's even more perplexing when considering the voting records and campaign rhetoric of the incumbents. He said, this is this guy Hibbling. He says, I think they're probably wondering, what else can we do? These are solidly conservative individuals. In other words, these people have excellent voting records. What's the score? They do the score with.
Yeah, but every different group does different scores. Yeah.
Right. We have the Brad and John score, and everybody scores.
We do. And it's only dependent on if you answer the phone, and if in 2018 somebody from your campaign once said, "Yeah, totally, we'll get back to you about advertising," and they never called you.
That's why we are having Mark McCluskey for president in 2028, because every time I call him, he answers the phone. So he has a 100% score with the Brad and John show. Okay. See, I talked about this before. And the interesting thing was that I think Mark McCluskey came right out and said it about the fact that the Republicans, and he talked about the fact that the Democrats are like a block. I mean, you see it all the time especially in the U.S. Congress, the U.S. Senate, or not the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House of Representatives. If, let's say, the balance is, 218 to 213, something like that now, okay. When there's a vote, it's 213 for or against. Every single stinking Democrat votes the same way, but the Republicans don't. And the interesting part of this is that with MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, when she's not happy with the current Speaker of the House, and to the point where the Democrats have already come out and said, hey, yeah, go ahead and throw him off the thing, because of the fact that they will vote in mass for every single Democrat will vote in mass for whoever the Democrats come up with, and a couple of the Republicans will cross over. So therefore, the House will be represented. The Speaker of the House will be a Democrat. What's his name? Jeffries? What's his name?
Hakeem Jeffries.
Hakeem Jeffries.
He's the fire alarm guy.
Right. No, he's not the fire alarm guy. That's a different guy. I think the fire alarm guy is Bowden or something like that. Once again, he should be thrown in the jail with
Jamal Bowman. You're right. Right. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, he should be thrown in jail with the January 6th guys.
Your point is the Democrats stick together. Now, I would say, Brad, I won't repeat the same arguments that we have every time that we talk about this, but in St. Louis City, by that logic, you wouldn't have progressive Democrats constantly arguing with South City Democrats. What you do in the St. Louis Board of Aldermen have progressive Democrats arguing with, say, South St. Louis Hills Democrats about what is really a Democrat. And Democrats in St. Louis City are at each other's throats of who's more progressive, who's more realistic, who hates the police more, who hates the police less. So every time we talk about how Democrats are so smart and they stick together, not only will I point out that it wasn't like that when Democrats were under Tip O'Neill in the House or when Democrats ran the Missouri House, but this time, Brad, I'll add a new angle that we haven't talked about, which is St. Louis City Democrats argue with each other all the time. St. Louis County Democrats can't always agree on how much of Sam Page's budget to agree on. So when you're in the majority, the burden of the majority is getting your people to stick together. And as a minority, it's much easier to create fissures and factions within the majority. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if it's Republicans or Democrats. To say that Democrats are so smart and they stick together is a blanket statement that's wildly incorrect.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, John, but still, there is no purity test for the Democrats. There is no purity test.
Agree.
And I think this is what's wrong in the fact that there shouldn't be someone, and the interesting part of this is, for the most part, these people who are on these Republican committees and things like that, I guess most of them are not, or maybe they're committee people or stuff like that. Maybe they are elected. I don't know. I was going to say they're not elected. But
mostly, yeah. Now they do have to, let me say though, they do have to be elected in their township. So their name is on the ballot every 4 years in a primary election.
But who in the world knows that? I mean, if you would go to door in your subdivision and knock on the door and go, "Hey, I'm John Combest. I'm taking just a random study. Do you know who your council person here is in our subdivision?" I don't think you'd find anybody who would know.
Absolutely not. You're completely correct, Brad.
You wouldn't find one single. Well, maybe you might find one person. Yeah, it's my aunt. It's Darlene, whatever her name is. That kind of stuff. See,
I'm just telling you that the downfall for the parties, and I would even attribute this to even some of the county committees, or Brad, let's even say the Freedom Caucus here in Missouri. At a certain point, to quote the former Raiders general manager, Al Davis, you got to just win, baby. And if the Nebraska Republican Party says these incumbents are not real Republicans, you got to have our stamp of approval, and the voters say, sure, pal, we're reelecting the incumbents, then I think the state Republican Party in Nebraska looks pretty impotent. And then what point do they even have to just sit around and be their own clique? If they can't move elections, what's their point?
See, what frustrates me, go back to the old saying, two things you never want to see being made, sausage and legislation.
Yeah.
It's to the point where once you sort of immerse yourself in this, and John, I don't think there's anybody immersed to the level that you are. You're like the official political junkie. You're the guy that knows all these people. And matter of fact, in the old days, John would have what's called a very impressive Rolodex. Now it's
the Rolodex.
Now it's all on his phone, where if I say something on the air and I insult one of his political friends, the next day 4 of them call me. I go, how'd you get my number? Well, I don't know. I just found it on the internet. Oh, I don't know anything. Did John Combest tell you to call me? No, he never told me. So
that's great.
That harkens back to a day when I made the comment about the fact that the people at the time, the CD3 people who were running for office, I said none of those people would come on the air with us. And the next day, all 3 of them called me, and I'm going like,
yeah. Well, it's good to pay homage to our audience once in a while, Brad.
Right. Okay. Moving on from that, this may take more than this segment. You sent me this yesterday, and this is like, okay, I'm going to make an example. Okay, I don't know if you know this or not, but Stan Kroenke is a doctor. Did you know this?
It's Dr. Stan Kroenke. No, actually, I didn't know that.
Dr. Stan Kroenke. And here's Dr. Stan Kroenke. He now has moved his practice to Los Angeles, okay? And let's say you were in a bad car accident in Los Angeles, and Dr. Kroenke at that particular evening was working the night shift at the ER, and he's an ER physician. And you came in with cuts and abrasions and bruises and stuff like that. More importantly, the cuts. Stan Kroenke would say, hold on a minute, I know exactly what will cure all your cuts. And he goes out to the cafeteria and brings back a salt shaker and starts shaking salt into your wound.
Okay. I know where you're going, Brad.
Okay. John sent me this story that it's in the St. Louis Business Journal, that there's a day coming up. Did they know the exact day yet?
I think it's October something.
When the Rams can buy Rams Park out in Earth City for how much, John?
$1, one smackaroo.
Not 0.0, whatever your favorite phrase is.
0.0.
Right. But $1. And I thought we got past this, no?
No, I guess, Brad, a good friend of mine who I love and respect has told me a story this week about how there's funny things in contracts that sometimes people miss. I don't know if you've ever heard anything like this.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes there's things that people miss. And I told my friend, I said, are you kidding me? And my friend said, no, sometimes people just miss these things in contracts. And it seems like that's what's happening at Rams Park. It could belong to the Los Angeles Rams for $1.
Well, let's carry this up into the next
I
segment.
will, and remember at 7:40, Brad, we have the Tortured Politicians Department, our last installment of it.
Okay,
at 7:40.
Let's just do a couple minutes on this in the next segment because we're running. Well, let's just finish this up, okay? When then do the tortured politicians, okay? The interesting part of this is that I do business with a company out there to give you an idea of how bad a taste Stan Kroenke left in the St. Louis area. I do business with a company that when they told me they used to have a location in Bridgeton and they moved out to Earth City, and the guy gave me the address and I go, where the hell is this? The name of the street is Athletic Way. Okay, now.
Yeah, it is.
Do you know what the street name used to be?
It's right at River Trail. Did it used to be like a Kroenke Boulevard?
No, it was called Rams Boulevard or something like that. So when the Rams left St. Louis and there was a street in Earth City named for the Rams, the county council got together. I think it was the county council, put together a proposition, whatever they do in the county council, and essentially say, no, we're not going to honor the Rams anymore. It's now Athletic Way. So the problem is, anybody who was on that street, and there are a couple buildings on that street besides the Rams people, anybody who used to be on that street had to change all their stationery and their addresses and stuff like that, and and go online and change all their accounts and stuff like, well, we used to be on Rams Way, now we're on Athletic Way. Did you move? Nope, same address, just different name. See, this is incredible that, and you know what's going to happen. You know damn well that Kroenke's not. He's going to just buy it and turn it into, maybe a home for the, maybe he's going to move all the L.A. homeless into Earth City. Wouldn't that be something? Oh, my God.
No, but, Brad, he should name it after a politician. And then that politician should get up there and name it after Billy 2x4. See, that's the way that the whole thing should go. I could write the whole run of show for them, Brad. In the business, we call it an ROS. We have the politician come up and then hand off the name.
What is ROS?
Run of show.
Oh, run of show. Okay. I was going to make a comment. You said something earlier about how things get stuck in bills and contracts that nobody notices. It's like your buddy Rod Jetton, which is the infamous village law. Remember that?
Yeah. We've discussed that before on the show.
Yeah, the village law, Rod Jetton, when he was Speaker of the House. It was stuck in some bill, and everybody, and once again, it's a perfect example. Nobody reads the damn bills because after the bill was vetted by the Senate and state of Missouri and the House, and then went to the governor and he signed it, then somebody who read the bill go, hey, what's this crazy little thing in the middle of this bill that talks about the village law? And everybody went ape poop, right? They went, oh my God, what is that? I mean, and I have a personal story of revolving around that, which is sort of weird. Okay.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?